challenge today. And I have two hats on today. As already mentioned by Niels, I have two contracts, one with Siemens Energy, one with Metaflex. And now I will show something how collaboration could look like to have at the end something like a domain ontology editor. So tooling which supports what is defined in IDO. And especially today, this Annex B, this is a picture out of Annex B. And at the end, we should talk about how to join forces. Could this be an example that others can do the same? What are the challenges? What is already done? And what is still open? So, and you will see which hat I have on by the logo. So when the Siemens Energy logo is displayed here on the upper right corner, then I have the hat of Siemens Energy on. If the Metaflex logo is here, then I have the Metaflex hat on. I will not have the hat of IDO today on. I'm member in the IDO core team as well, but this hat I don't have on my head today. It's enough to have only two. Let's start. So I will have a deeper look now into this picture. And you see here one blue arrow and one orange arrow. In the next picture, you don't see it, and I will explain why. So IDO is, from my perspective, some kind of data governance. But is it really data governance? At the end, it enables to make knowledge explicit and with this human and machine readable. But what are the challenges? There is not really a governance how to make knowledge explicit outside yet. We have data governance, but do we have knowledge governance? I don't know. But IDO could pave the way in the direction having knowledge governance. But governance doesn't make sense if you don't have the right tools. So what you need as well is an infrastructure which implements the knowledge governance. What is needed to have it? Governance needs standards. Hopefully standards which are international standards, like, for example, IC 61360 Part 1, governance about properties. Maybe you want to have GFOS. Here, governance about properties. So here 2 times the term properties appears. Then maybe you have QUT. Their quantity is defined. So one challenge is only if you have the term property, you have this definition, but you have different standards. And if you are looking now into IDO, then it is not named property. What could be the same or not? So is this physical quantity similar or equal to the definition here? And list physical quantity is a subclass of list quality. So is it quality? These are questions. So this is still a challenge which is not yet solved by the IDO. But the IDO is paving the way to bring these things together. And when I'm talking now about properties, I don't mean something here from OWL, not annotation property, not data type property, not object properties. When I'm talking about property, I mean it in the in the sense which is defined in IEC 61360 Part 1 from 2017. So if you have done it, if you have now maybe defined that this is the right term, then you have maybe some kind of core ontologies, you have guidelines. So here you have defined some governance. And if you want to create then a knowledge graph or ontologies or whatever, then you have your domain expert who is a knowledge owner. And you have someone who is able to do something in Protégé, in top rate composer, any what you want editor to create ontologies. And this person should know how you want to create it. So the governance, how do you want to have knowledge governance? Yeah, and this doesn't scale. So this is the reason why Siemens Energy decided, okay, if we have this here, so if we have done something, then why not having a tool which knows this and which is doing what they are doing and guiding the knowledge expert to create then ontologies. How can it look like? Now I want to go deeper in what is meant here with core ontologies, with guidelines, to tell what should be in such a domain ontology editor implemented. And we should maybe discuss it later. Is this a way for others as well or not? What is already available? What is still not yet defined that others can use it as well? Siemens Energy started with the predecessor of IDO with ISO 5926 Part 14. But you are seeing the same here in this picture, what you have already seen in the other picture. A bit different, not top down. Here it is flat, but it is the same. And what is missing? I have mentioned IEC 61360 Part 1. If you are looking deeper in, then you find overlaps here on this level. But there is additional things. So IEC 61 Part 1 has defined a lot of data types already. For example, in measure type datum, int type datum, number type datum in this hierarchy. So this could be an extension of IDO, and maybe that something here is and then it is reflected that, for example, scalar quantity datum, which is defined in IDO, this is something with a measure, and all the others are then quantity datum because they don't have a measure. And the data type is already defined. Yeah, and then you have the units. You need then the connection to QUDT, not inventing the wheel again, reusing what is already existing. And based on this, and now we are on what the domain ontology editor should do, should use all this, which is already available, and define how to use it. What does it mean now creating a physical quantity based on IEC 61360 Part 1? Then you should reuse here all this which is defined, creating then restrictions which tell that weight has an int measure type datum, has the quantity kind mass, and the unit kilogram. And last but not least, and this should be then reflected here in our restrictions. I don't go deeper in. This is one possibility to do so. So here the other restriction that you are telling the cardinality about the quantity quantified as what was interpreted having cardinality 1-to-1. It is without historical data, and having other is with historical data. And then the restrictions in this case that gram, kilogram, and ton is allowed for the weight, where we have then the connection to QUDT. And last but not least, you can then create instance data based on it. And this is similar to the picture we have seen out of the IDO, where we have then here the datum value, which is defined in IDO as well. But what we don't have in this picture, we don't have the shortcuts which are mentioned in the picture. I will come to the shortcuts later in my presentation. So I think now you know what the domain ontology editor should do, but this is not the only possibility to implement it. It's only one possibility. As soon as we have defined the governance and everything, we could define auto templates, for example, as well, or whatever else, doesn't matter. I think you want to know how does it look like in the domain ontology editor. So I will, we will have now a small live demo to that you see how this looks like. So this is really the system now from Siemens Energy, how it looks like. I have selected now a property which is called circle power, which has for sure a name, in this case in English and in German, and the same for the definition in English and German. You can add more, but here we have a so-called wizard where you at first have to choose. So the user is guided to select now all the information which is needed to build a property based on the information and all the rules you have seen in the slides before. So you have to choose the type. In this case, it is a rational. It is rational measure because a unit is selected. So it is clear that at the end, the result is a rational measure type. And it is not a list of values behind, it is a single value. And historical changes, no. So this means the cardinality is defined 1-to-1 of the quantity datum. Yeah. Another possibility is having a list of values. For example, here, this is another one where you have now said, okay, it is not a predefined list should be there. And in this case, it is already reduced. So not the whole possible values which are defined, only in this case, 3 milliseconds, seconds, and 6 milliseconds. And this is, you can see here. So this is a list of values for the open switching time tolerance. These 4 are predefined, and in this case, 3 is for all these. And I don't know which property I have here now. I think it is the first closing time tolerance first close. So it is this one here. So it is 3 milliseconds is part of it, but I think 4 seconds not. So it's not mentioned here. So only 3 milliseconds is allowed in the context of this property. That's it for now for the presentation, but you see, you can guide it. And in the background, now all the restrictions are created, which are predefined and should be in line now with IDO. But it is not yet defined that it is really IDO conform. Other possibilities, if we are looking now on, for example, E-class, then it looks a bit different. So we have then the relation between a class and a property. So this has quality. But in E-class, for example, you have then an application class which has a class reference to a block in the and the block has inheritance, and there is an other block inherited which is then assigned to this class. So there is additional information. If you look here now in the green part, you have the pure ontology, which is general and not specific for E-class, but you are able to add, for example, then the additional properties and blocks and so on, which are needed to be complete. And this is a possibility how you can maybe use then and do the mapping between something which is then general. So you have here the general property, and then all the other information as well. And I can show how it could look like. So if we are looking, I don't know if this one, no, this is the other one. So this property is defined as a general property, but has the identifier, and with this a mapping to an E-class. So in this case, it is not a really E-class. You see it here. Here should be a 3, but it is similar. So you can have now identifiers of other standardization systems to map to this, but this will not be enough. You need, in addition, what I have shown. Or what you can do as well, and this is done here with the other property, map it to a tool. So in this case, it is a tool used at Siemens Energy. And the identifier in this tool for this property is called blah, blah, blah. I don't know. So you have a common understanding, which is defined now here in, based hopefully on IDO and the additional patterns which are needed to be really complete. And then you can do the mappings. And for the humans, the mappings would be then synonyms. Okay, let's continue because it's already in a lot what I have presented. Let's now step back to the beginning and go now to this orange, which is for me the perspective of the data. So we had the perspective of knowledge collection. And now how can we map this to the data? And IDO offers, from my perspective, a possibility. Because if you are looking in your databases, then this here could be a data set, which is in one of your databases. And you can, if you are doing it like this, then you can immediately create instance data out of it. But the challenge is often the data quality. So if you are defining now how the data should look like, that it is an integer type and so on, what we have seen, then you can create already shackle shapes or all restrictions, which is a bit defining the data quality. So the ontologies and what IDO enables gives you the possibility already to define data quality. And the other point is this has no meaning. 20, what is it? You don't know. So, and And this is a challenge from the data perspective. And if we are now combining everything, then we have again this picture out of the the Appendix B. And I think that in IDO, one annotation property is missing, because if we have now the knowledge here, we have the data here, and we could connect both if we would have an annotation property like is derived from that this data type property is linked to here and linked to here. Room for discussion, but then we would be complete. We would have then, we can derive then out of this all the other things in both directions. So from the perspective of the knowledge, we could automatically then create these shortcuts. And from the data perspective, if this is well done, then we have all the other information. And with this, the meaning, and maybe already based on the shackle shapes, which are defined here as well, the data quality. And everything together, I would say IDO is the enabler to do so. And now the ones who want to use it have to tell, yes, it is fine, we want to do it. So now we are coming to the summary. Maybe you remind that Paul last time has presented this one here. And now I have the two hats on. So the hat from the vendor as well as the hat of an industry like Siemens Energy. We are seeing, okay, this will be done. We will have the disk, we will have the published, but here are the challenges. So all the challenges I have mentioned are here. And so what I would like to have now, and this is what I already mentioned at the beginning, let's join forces, let's collaborate. Now we have enough room for discussion, so my time was perfect. I wanted to have half an hour for discussions, questions and answers, because I think you have a lot of questions and hopefully I have answers, or we have the answer. Yeah, we don't have, let's work together. Let's use what IDO is already providing and develop it together in a direction that it really scales, that we have the right tools, that we have at first the right definition of the different patterns, which are not yet defined in IDO, but needed to be able to use, for example, then properties from GFOS, from DEXP, from IAC CDD, E-class, and so on, bring it together, having it maybe used together with AAS, Asset Administration Shell. All this, from my perspective, could be possible, but there is still a lot of work. And this should be the next step, what we should do, and should do it together. Because from my perspective, at first, the different companies should say how they want to use it, that the software vendors know what they should implement, which means which patterns are needed, which patterns are general enough that the different companies saying, yes, this is what we need. That's it from my side.
Okay, thank you so much, Andreas. I'm sure that there are many questions. Since we have 35 participants, I would appreciate if those of you who have questions to raise, either write it in the chat or raise your hand so we can see it. And I will try to take the questions as they come in. From the chat, I can see that Torbjörn Holm, you had a question or a comment. So I think that was the first. So if you could start, if that's okay.
My comment or question was outside the scope of properties, so I wait with that question.
Okay. There are several comments. I don't know if that's something we should bring up. It's more a discussion which has been going on. Paulo, you have at least a comment. I don't know if you will bring that up.
Several comments.
Yeah. Paulo, can you?
Hi. Okay, yeah, I'm just putting my comments there just to document what's coming through my mind here. But okay, my main question I have regarding the presentation. First, I would like to say that it's very nice, the ontology editor. My question here is whether we should face this challenge, because if we go back to how one should segment knowledge, we talk about upper level ontologies, we talk about domain ontologies, but there is a third category of ontology that most people do not even pay much attention to it. That's the application ontology.
Mm-hmm.
And the application ontology is where we normally address most of those alignments between the upper level ontology and the domain ontology. Actually, that's exactly the purpose of the application ontology. And if you are using application ontology, you need to basically all the time decide whether you're going to import the full spec of a given ontology, or if you're going to marry it.
Yes.
The ontology.
This is Nils again. There was a question whether we should stop the recording or we should keep that on. I think the proposal was to stop the recording, and I think that is a good proposal for a discussion, that we stop the recording. So I will do that now.
Well, I can stop my comment here as well.